Hey, what's up guys? UrAvgWarGamer is back with another video of World of Warships. And today, I'm gonna be taking a look at top 5 most powerful destroyers that you can buy right now for credits. In the tech tree lines for these nations that you can see here respectively, I'm sure there are a lot of destroyers that you might be looking at and maybe thinking of buying a destroyer, just grinding that line in particular, maybe of some particular nation, and you might be thinking that what are the best destroyers that you can grind right now that fits perfectly to the meta, because the meta changes quite a lot from from something to something. And these destroyers, I would say, in my opinion, fits perfectly not only in the random battles, but also they will also be suited well in ranked battles because they have really good competitiveness. The game impact for me is the most important point for destroyers if I pick them to play in randoms or ranked, and hence the reason why I have picked top 5 destroyers in general. Now, I have already posted the cruisers and battleships as well for the top 5 picks in other videos. You can go and check that out. But this list will just very much subjective and very much biased to me because, well, I do like gunboat destroyers over torpedo boat destroyers, and hence you will be seeing the top destroyers more aligned with the gunboat power, okay, compared to the torpedo boats. Now, sure, I can understand that this is sort of a disclaimer that I want to give, and I can just give you a reason that why the gunboat destroyers are powerful than torpedo boats is simply because of the consistency. The consistency of the guns. The torpedoes might be pretty devastating and unpredictable to enemy ships. I mean, if you're able to land a perfect salvo on a broadside battleship, you might be able to dev strike that guy, and you might be able to change the tide of the game. But in my opinion, this will never going to happen almost all the time. But at least one thing that can happen if you pick gunboats is that the guns will have the exact similar reliability. The predictability is pretty much straightforward. You shoot the guns, the DD will die, or you may be able to maneuver in such a way where the destroyers might not able to understand you or might be able to predict you, and you will be able to get a good gun fight where you will just trade their destroyer out completely out of the water. And that's the reason why this video is going to be a lot much more subjective to the gunboats, okay? There are some torpedo boats, however, so don't worry about that. And with that disclaimer said and gets out of the way, let's talk about our number 5 destroyer, which is going to be the German destroyer Elbing. Now, a lot of people, or maybe a lot of players, might not like the fact that I posted the Elbing at number 5. Well, I do enjoy really interesting gun power that Elbing gets, okay? The guns is the star of the show for the Elbing. This German destroyer having 6 guns, 150mm, improved HE pen, which is 38mm, 12% fire chance, but having anemic HEDPM, only 103k HEDPM, which means that you will be struggling even against Shima. Like Shima has 127 or 128k HEDPM, so it will be able to trade you out if not for this armor that Elbing gets. Now, I can understand destroyer versus destroyer is the most important thing when we are talking about destroyers, strong destroyers in particular. Elbing kind of has this weak role when it takes on destroyers, but when it takes on cruisers, it is better than a lot of destroyers. When it takes on battleships, it's also going to be pretty powerful, okay? And even the carriers, well, it is very much mixed, I would say. I have mixed feelings about the carriers, that the Elbing can perform against. But again, against cruisers and battleships, I would say the damage farming potential that Elbing gets is something that is extremely reliable, okay? You have the guns, you have the AP, which is unlike any other destroyer in the game. You have the dispersion of the guns, which are 6 of them. Like, the dispersion of the Elbing is very specialized. It has better dispersion than even destroyers, okay? And since the shell velocity of the Elbing is so good that even at 13.3 kilometers, which is like the base range, right? We're talking about the base range, which is 13.3 kilometers, which is very impressive. And considering the shell velocity and the arcs of the shells is so good that you will be easily able to land almost all the shells on a particular target, even at range, because of the special dispersion that I was talking. So not only that this is the factor that I like a lot about the Elbing, well, the AP is just a powerhouse. Now you have the AP that's just able to citadel cruisers at 10 to 12 kilometer, okay? Even the Des Moines, let alone the Minotaur, the Des Moines is sort of a heavy American cruiser, right? And it will also going to get citadel at around 10 to maybe 11 or 12 kilometers, okay? And that's the power of the Elbing AP. The alpha is pretty impressive. I mean, if you want to switch to HE and set fires, the guns, the accuracy is something that you will so much enjoy, that I felt Elbing to be so much powerful, okay? It's not about that it can take well on destroyers. In fact, it's not going to be able to take well on destroyers. But one thing that you can particularly do about the Elbing is that you play at range and you just farm battleships and cruisers, because that's what the Elbing role really is. It's sort of a cruiser disguised as a destroyer. I feel that the destroyer is kind of not there in Elbing. It's more of a cruiser thing that it gets, okay? But again, the DPM is kind of still pretty much resembles to that of destroyers, especially the HE. The HE is pretty anemic, but the accuracy still makes up for it. It's like you can say that the hitting damage is particularly very, very high for Elbing compared to any other destroyers, because it gets the special dispersion. So you will be able to get all 6 shell hits even at 13 kilometer on a cruiser, on battleship, or even a destroyer at 10-12 kilometers. It is entirely possible. The shell velocity, just like I said, amazing. The concealment is not amazing, and I would also recommend you not to build for it, because it's still going to have 6.5 kilometer concealment if you fully build for it, and hence the reason why it will be still getting outspoted by even more, like most like gunboat destroyers in the game. Like some of the most disgusting gunboat destroyers, like for example, you can say the Daring. I won't say it's like disgusting, it's very, very good gunboat destroyer. The Gearing, the Gearing, the Daring, maybe some couple of other destroyers that have good damage per minute can be able to outspot like Grozavoy. So that's where Elbing will struggle, and that's the reason why I just didn't build it for the the concealment. You can always build it for guns, which is going to be pretty much like this. You increase the range, because the 16 kilometer range is going to be so comfortable against cruisers and battleships that you will enjoy a lot. Damage farming potential of Elbing is some of the best in this game. You just have easy time landing shells on a target, and you will just set fires because of the hitting power. The ability to just get all the shells hit on a superstructure where you aim at, and without you really thinking about the shell flight time, and the shells are pretty arky. That's not going to happen with the Elbing, and that's the reason why the firepower, the penetration, the AP, the citadel that you can do on cruisers, the damage output that you can do on broadside battleship, like chunking for like 5-6k, it's really nice. The Elbing feels great. I love Elbing, and that's the reason why I think that this placed for pretty well at number 5, at least for me. The HP is also some of the best at this tier. 30,900 is not something that I usually see on a destroyer. Also, you do have decent depth charges. You also have some torpedoes, and also having a very good reload time, considering it's sort of a gun boat, destroyer, Elbing. And then you have this 16k alpha with 50 knots of torpedoes, which is kind of funny. Like the torpedoes are pretty much like insanely slow, but again, you can always think of like you send the torpedoes around the area where the battleships are gonna go at, and you can able to land some of these torpedoes. It's just like a sea land mines, whatever you call it. It's like a sea mines. You just send them and you just forget them, and most of the time they will hit because of the really good concealment of these torpedoes itself, which is 1.2 kilometer. And having the decent range at 13.5 kilometer means that you will be still pretty much fine, even if there are some radar cruisers, for example, like the Moskva, the Nevsky, the typical Russian 12 kilometer radars. That's where the torpedoes are still gonna be pretty easily to hit them because of this really good range. And maneuverability, it's not something that good, but at least you have the maximum speed at 38 knots, which I would say is pretty decent, slightly above average. But what really makes Elbing pretty insane, and I'm saying it sort of make Elbing an upgrade, is going to be the legendary mode. If you're able to get the automated gun and fuel systems, you will just started to see Elbing to be insane speed boost sort of king in just moving here and there. So it's gonna become like a Russian gunboat destroyer. with the speed boost active. Like, you can have a maximum of speed boost from 8%, which already is not bad, to 20%. That's because you're getting to extra 12% speed boost, right? Your turret traverse is also going to be improved by double. Your main battery load time is going to be slightly nerfed, but you're still getting some main battery load time. So it's not like a complete trade-off of a main battery load time. And guess what? If you somehow manage to get the Gunther Lutens, okay, the legendary captain, I have put this on Hindenburg. If you're able to get the Elbing, this captain, well, this is gonna make it even better. Well, let me show you why. Well, if you get 3 sporting ribbons, you will be able to heal 3000 HP at tier 10. If you're able to get 140 shell hits on a target, you will be able to get the extra 7.5% DPM buff. Elbing can get so much huge value because of the leg mod and because of the captain that I just find it really, really powerful and a must ship to just try to play at number 5 without a shadow of doubt. It's gonna be really fun, guys. Surely, you can still able to just do a lot of damage with AP. I haven't even talked about the AP pen angles that it gets. AP pen angles are pretty insane. I mean, even at like very tightly angled destroyers, you will start to get some penetration damage. Now I can understand that the AP DPM might looks good and you want to shoot at broadside destroyers. The fact is that you will get overpens because it does not have something like reduced arming threshold or short fuse AP. It's a normal AP with really good pen angles, right? And then you can always switch to AP on an angled destroyer to do some good damage, and I have done like 7-8k damage on an angled destroyer because then you will start to get some penetration damage. But then you have to switch to HE if the broadside destroyer is still keeping up the way that he knows that the Elbing is shooting HE. So yeah, I mean, if the destroyer knows that there's Elbing shooting AP, that he will just go flat broadside because he does not want to take huge damage. A good destroyer player will definitely gonna do that. So then you have to switch to HE to get more damage. Otherwise, it's gonna be pretty anemic AP damage overall. So I would say with these all strengths that it gets, apart from the worst concealment, I would say not really good A, even though the defensive wave fire does exist. It kind of does not exist, unfortunately. It's not there, unfortunately. I could expect some plane shutdown, but it's not going to be a lot. So A defense is just going to be okay. It's nothing too special. I mean, maybe the low, average or below average player might be able to take 1 flag or 2, but it only have what? Like couple of flags, if I can show you quickly. You only have 2 shell explosions in a salvo. So it's really anemic. The A is not there, unfortunately, but still, at number 5, if I have explained everything correctly, definitely makes Elbing feel really strong at number 5. Alright, so at number 4, we have Pan-Asian Torpedo Boat Destroyer. Well, you might not have expected it, since I have already said in like previous time that I might not be featuring the Torpedo Boat Destroyer, but well, here it is. The Yueyang is there, and it's actually a bit difficult. There is some really good contenders out there, for example, like Shimakaze, and there is also a Kassard that is also a really good torpedo boat destroyer. But I felt that Yueyang has a lot of special things going for it. I mean, it has 2 playstyles. I will explain like why I'm talking about some like couple of playstyles that you can actually have on Yueyang, and particularly on Yueyang. I mean, you can always say maybe that the Shimakaze also going to have some different sort of playstyle, or maybe the Kassard, but Yueyang does have something very different going for it. Now, first of all, it has deep water torpedoes, okay? For a torpedo boat destroyer, a deep water torpedoes will only going to hit cruisers, battleship, or carriers, which is sort of a limitation since, well, their concealment is insane. The torpedo reaction time is below 4 seconds, which is kind of crazy. You will have little to no time to dodge these torpedoes. I mean, once you saw these torpedoes without the hydro, well, you will expect them to just hit without even just pressing A or D button whatsoever, because these torpedoes are that undodgeable. And that's the biggest strength of the Yueyang, that I kind of felt it better than Shimakaze. Although the Kassard, which is a French, torpedo boat destroyer, does have some good concealment on the torpedoes, but again, it's not like Yueyang. Yueyang almost have double the battle reaction time, at least compared to the Japanese torpedo boat destroyer like Shimakaze. And you do have 10 torpedoes, and you do have what? torpedo reload booster that they have recently added like a couple of years ago, if I'm not wrong. Like I think at least some time ago. I'm sure of that. So the torpedo reload booster and also the buff on the torpedoes that they have done at 18.8k means, well, you are going to be an absurd, spamming of torpedoes with torpedo reload booster. It's not going to be even funny once you are dropping these deep water torpedoes, and not a single torpedo is going to be dodgeable from those poor battleship that does not have access to hydro, or even a cruiser, and especially the cruisers, because, well, Shimakaze torpedoes are going to be a lot much more easier to dodge because of the maneuverability of the cruisers. But, well, Yueyang, it's entirely the different case. The deep water torpedoes, the detection on the torpedo, the speed of the torpedoes also is 76 knots, means that, well, it's going to be a lot of pain to deal with. And also one more thing that I like about the Yueyang torpedoes, that they are having very long range, 13.5 kilometer, compared to the Shimakaze, only 12 kilometer. So yeah, that range is pretty nice. That really makes the Yueyang torpedoes are good. Okay, now also one more thing that I liked compared to the Shimakaze, because again, I am comparing it to the Shimakaze because Shimakaze is also very strong contender. It's a very good nominee at number 4, but again, slightly going to give edge to Yueyang for many reasons, and one of the reasons I have said, torpedo reload booster, so you get extra torpedoes, and then you also have better gun power, and you also have, I would say, second best smoke in this game after the daring short burst smoke generator that you find on Tech Tree, British destroyer line. Afterwards, then these smokes are the best in line, and I would say are pretty powerful because they load quickly, they have decent dispersion time as well as action time, so you can even smoke up some cruisers out there if you are playing it in division. You do have engine boost, which is pretty nice. You have better HETPM than Shimakaze. The AP is also there. I mean, the AP does not have any speciality going for it, but you have six guns, sorry, at 4 seconds, and it just feels good overall to just farm cruisers and battleship if you are in smoke, although you are not going to be good at all because since it's a torpedo boat, the gun power is pretty anemic, unfortunately. But again, there is something that I was talking about, that it has a interesting second play style that you can always take, and that is going to be the radar. But why I would pick radar on the Yueyang with 5.8 kilometer concealment, right? Well, the concealment is good. It's not something that I want to talk about, the concealment itself. It's about that I want to talk is going to be the legendary mod. Now, the legendary mod is sort of really kind of makes Yueyang from torpedo boat focused destroyer to like sort of a gunboat focused destroyer. It actually switches its playstyle if you pick the improved main artillery unique upgrade, okay? So if you spend research points, not only you're going to get the main battery load time to minus 18%, and if you're also going to switch torpedo tubes mod 2 to main battery mod 3, you can get a very spicy reload time at around 2 point something seconds, or at least something like 3 seconds. So it's actually going to replace concealment, but again, you are going to use it because you want to switch it to radar. And once you switch it to radar, it's gonna be really spicy. You are also going to have increased action time. You already have 25 seconds of duration, which is very nice. Compared to the small end, which is kinda extremely powerful, rare, premium, pan-European destroyer. You guys know that, right? Hopefully you guys know the small end, how powerful, rare destroyer that is. Well, Yueyang has 5 seconds battery duration, as well as if you use this unique upgrade, you can get the surveillance radar up like 20% more, which can get it up to like 30 seconds, which is gonna be a lot. This is actually going to be similar to that of Ragnar in terms of the action time, which is really impressive. And you do have 4 number of consumables, and you also going to have some smoke screen dispersion time, which is gonna be, I would say, nice. But again, you are switching the Yueyang playstyle from torpedo boat focus to gunboat focus, and even then you still going to have at least till the 10 torpedoes still going to have pretty relevantly decent reload time. Maybe it will go up to like 110 or maybe 112 something seconds, maybe slightly worse, but then you still will going to launch these torpedoes. And compared to the small end, because it kind of becomes small end light, or I would say a budget small end, it's gonna be like a budget spawn with a surveillance radar, right? So even then, you're still going to have tons of torpedoes on your, on your sleeve, and you still be able to use torpedo load booster. And I haven't even talked about some of the things that are pretty good. Your concealment is 5.8, which is pretty nice. Your speed is pretty decent. You can have an extra speed with speed boost. You also have, pretty, I would say, below average entire. It's actually really not good at all. So I will just completely forget about the carriers. If the carrier loves to strike you, well, that's where this combo is gonna be suffering a lot with the surveillance radar and the leg mod. But then if you do use the smokes and make it a torpedo boat, then it's gonna be still pretty viable against carriers, because you will just smoke yourself up to disengage. But still, other than that, the Yueyang is very, very powerful, and having still some good torpedoes that you can just do massive damage to the battleships without, they able to maneuver at all, compared to maybe the Shimakaze's higher reaction time torpedoes. Also, one more aspect that I would say Yueyang has a lot much more better and advantageous position is going to be the captains. This special captain, it's not a unique captain. Well, Darong actually able to give you some extra fire, in terms of, having the enhanced skill, and also you're going to have some increase in survivability, and that is very important since you still not going to have access to heals like Smolensk. So it's gonna be still kind of a double-edged sword, because you're gonna be trading out the destroyer without able to utilize the smoke. And so with the only HP that you have, which is going to be 23k, with the special captain, well, it's gonna be sometimes a bit rough compared to the gunboat, but still, you can still going to radar them at least behind the islands if they are using it as cover. And then even if you don't want the Darong, you can always switch to the Shah Zhenbing, which is gonna be pretty powerful captain. Now I have put that in Kunming, which is a super destroyer, but what it really gives is gonna be a lot better than Shimakaze. I mean, you have to get the, the Kraken on the Yamamoto, but to get something out of it, right? But in the case of Shah Zhenbing, if you put it on Yueyang, you're going to get extra torpedo reload booster, you're going to have the better cooldown, you're going to get better torpedo speed, you're going to get, maybe, if you get a combat scout, you're going to get the buff on main battery load time. So many buffs, if you're able to get couple of things done, is something that I feel kind of makes it a lot much more better than Shimakaze overall. And you do have, again, two play styles. That's what makes Yueyang very interesting and powerful at number 4. I hope I just able to just explain everything. Maybe there might be a couple of things, but I hope that I have completed what Yueyang is about. At number 3, I think I cannot forget this destroyer. This French destroyer is really powerful. It's not only powerful against destroyers under certain situations, but it's also gonna be kind of feel similar like Elbing in just farming crazy amount of damage to those poor battleships or cruisers if they just stuck open water, or maybe in a bow-end position where they cannot disengage. The Kleber definitely comes into my mind for many reasons, and it sits perfectly at number 3 for me. Well, what are the reasons? Well, first of all, you have 8 guns. 8 guns with almost slightly, higher caliber guns at 140mm compared to other destroyers. For example, like maybe 127mm guns on Gearing or Yueyang. But so, they have better shell velocity like the Elbing. So the shell arcs are going to be extremely comfortable, and just like Elbing, you have very good main battery firing range at 13.6 compared to the Elbing's 13.3. So that's what makes the Kleber really comfortable with this insanely good shell velocity, the good shell flight time, and the shell arcs are that good that you just easily able to land so many shells on battleships or cruisers. And even the destroyers that are lurking around 9 and 10 kilometer, you can easily able to gun them down without really able to take a lot of damage. And one thing that really makes Kleber special, and that's kind of like the French gimmick that they have given to Kleber, or maybe the Marceau, but that's a premium one, and that's why I'm not talking about it, is going to be the speed boost. Now the speed boost is 20% maximum, okay? So that is really nice. And you do have so good gun power, even without using the main battery load booster. I haven't even talked about the main battery load booster, but the HE DPM might be slightly not the best. I mean, without the reload booster, it's gonna be feeling a bit anemic. It's kind of very much resembles to that of Yueyang, which I have talked about as a torpedo boat destroyer. But then you might be saying that how you will be able to counter destroyers? Well, you have main battery load booster, which just going to absolutely smash the shit out of DDs. I mean, you just pop this main battery load booster, you just I would say double the DPM of what you currently have in HE or AP, and you will just gonna smash the destroyer. You will actually going to eat the destroyer alive. 3K, 4K volleys because of this HE, like, let me show you the HE alpha. You have 2000 HE alpha. So the HE alpha is good, the fire chance is 10%, which is very impressive considering these guns, and the shell velocity, just like I said, is pretty good. So you are a very good fire starter, and then you can do a couple of things. You can either just kill the destroyer if it gets completely caught off guard, if it does not have smoke, and if it able to somehow gets around your pretty, I would say, poor concealment at 7.8 kilometer. It's kind of like a balancing factor of Kleber. The ability of how brutalized the Kleber can take on against destroyers. Wargaming has just simply given it a worse concealment, and that's the reason why if the destroyer caught completely off guard, if it somehow managed to get spotted by you at, itself, even with that worse concealment, well, you just pop the main battery load booster, and you will just completely kill him. He will just die. There's just no other way of saying it. Any other destroyer, like even the Smolensk, is going to be having an extremely rough time. And the reason why I am saying this, like why Kleber is going to be also really powerful against gunboat destroyers, well, you have pretty decent HP 25k, but it's actually, I would say, theoretically it might look like this, but practically it's going to be a lot much more higher, since it does have a French saturation mechanics. Well, it's 26k by the way if you use the Charlie Kilo flag. So Kleber has the really good French saturation mechanic, which means that if you take a lot of damage over time, you will be taking half of the HE damage compared to any other destroyer in the game. Like usually destroyer takes full pen damage if I'm not wrong, but once this French saturation or any part of your structure of the ship gets saturated to the point where it will only going to just receive half of the damage, means that your HP practically is going to be slightly, or I would say quite higher than what you are seeing currently right now. And hence the reason why if you might be able to shoot the shoot the Kleber, you might be seeing the damage is not, I'm not getting a whole lot of damage, it's just getting really low over time just because of the saturation mechanic. It is so good. It's kind of like a heal, but you cannot see the heal. It's kind of like the whole hull of a ship itself is just what makes it a lot much more tankier because of the saturation. And just like I said, the guns are pretty good. You can set tons of fires on cruisers or battleship if you set main battery load booster, if he DCPs the fire, or the AP is so powerful like Elbing, but it's not like Elbing. The Elbing has insane AP, but Kleber has, I would say, very good AP. So there's a difference between outstanding AP and very good. So at maybe 9 or 10 or 8 kilometers, if you're able to get the broadside of a cruiser, well, you can just surprise them with main battery load booster, and you will just gonna delete them instantly as well, because the DPM will just going to get doubled. Or I would say 50% increase. I'm not gonna say that it's gonna be double. 50% increase means it's gonna be more than 350k or something, and so that cruiser cannot able to take that citadel damage that you can also do at 2.7k. So that really makes Kleber a sort of a surprising factor if you get a broadside on cruisers. And even if you don't find the guns to be that much strong enough, if there is a full HP battleship, well, consider using torpedoes. You have 12 torpedoes with having insane 77 seconds of reload time. It's kind of like having almost a torpedo TPM more than Shimakaze, if I'm not wrong. Its torpedo TPM is very impressive considering it has insane alpha, insane reload time, and you have 12 torpedoes, 6 on each side. Means that the Kleber is gonna just do so much damage. You're just gonna send torpedoes, 6 torpedoes to the battleship Bowen, and then you just turn around, send 6 more torpedoes. After a minute, you send more torpedoes. And that's how you can have a unique playstyle with the gunboat, with the speed that I might not even have explained, that how much ridiculous this ship really is with the speed. You have 44 knots, and then you can get up to speed boost. You can get it up to like 52 knots or something, 53 knots. Yeah, so at long ranges, if anything tries to shoot you, you're just gonna be speed juke the hell out of them. Like any battleship or cruiser that have really, I would say, not the best of the shell velocity, and the shells are gonna take some time. Unlike Soviet guns, well, you can just speed juke so many shells in Kleber that you will be so much annoying to deal with. It's so powerful. It's so powerful in ranked. It's so much fun in ranked battles. I mean, you can say that sometimes the destroyer does have an advantage because of this poor concealment, but again, this is the only balancing factor that the Kleber has. If it gets like 6.5 kilometer concealment, it's gonna be busted. It's already a borderline powerful ship, right? Borderline overpowered ship. But then the concealment factor is the only one of the reasons. That's why Kleber sits only at number 3. Otherwise, if the concealment is like 6 kilometer, like on the Daring or something, it can just easily go up to number 1. There's no other way of saying it. It's gonna be S tier. It's just do so much good against battleship, cruisers, and even destroyers. Unlike Elbing, it's gonna be better than better against destroyers. But again, just like Elbing, it's gonna be worse against carriers. Carriers will just love the Kleber because it's basically have almost non-existent A. But again, since you do have speed, you can speed juke a lot of the drops that they will do. And hence the reason why I would say Kleber is an amazing ship. It's definitely pretty much worth it at number 3. And yeah, I just literally forget it before getting up to the number 2 list. Well, Kleber does not have access to the smoke, unlike Elbing, or maybe you can say Yueyang. So it is definitely entirely relying on the speed to basically able to mitigate a lot of the damage that is coming towards it. You cannot able to disengage in some sort of smoke because it does not have smoke in the first place. So that's where Kleber you have to be a bit more specialized at long ranges, and if you want to take on destroyers, you have to be at close ranges to spot that destroyer. You might be able to farm that at medium range as well if they are spotted, and that's how the Kleber sits pretty nice at number 3. At number 2, I would say the Gdansk, which is a tier 10 pan-European destroyer, a gunboat focused destroyer compared to the Holland torpedo boat. Well, it feels really powerful. It kind of feels like Kleber in some different ways, which I will explain. Now, why Gdansk, I would say, feel a lot much better than Kleber itself. Now, Kleber is very good, don't get me wrong, but Gdansk is also very special as well. And, well, since the Kleber does not have access to smoke, at least the Gdansk have this huge advantage of getting the smoke. And then, I mean, if you want to farm cruisers that does not have radar, and if they are perma spotted, well, you can just farm them with the HE DPM that it gets, which is, I would say, pretty impressive. I mean, you have what? Let me check the HE DPM real quick. You have like 250, or I would say 246k HE DPM. Now you do have 7 guns, okay? Again, kind of having the similar caliber like Kleber, because it's kind of like Mogador, a hull at tier 10. Mogador is a tier 9 tech tree French Kleber sort of line destroyer, so it's still having this sort of Mogador guns that it gets. So the shell velocity of the guns are also kind of having similar parameters in terms of the shell velocity, the arcs, the shells that you easily able to land. It's gonna be feeling a lot much more similar, and that's the reason why it has some sort of edge with the smoke and the guns that it gets. Now, it unfortunately has a different playstyle than Kleber. I have talked about the Kleber. It has a playstyle where you have to get to the broadside cruisers, where you will be able to smash them with the reload booster. Well, Gdansk is kind of like the, I would say, old school ship, sort of, in which you just have to smoke up and you just farm those high DPM cruisers out there with HE only. It has only access to HE, okay? So unlike Kleber, that's a huge difference, okay? But then you are getting something back in return, which is going to be, just like I said, smoke, as well as pretty absurd thing. I just cannot believe it that they have given a tech tree destroyer, or any destroyer in general, a radar. Like, radar is a mechanic that just completely makes other destroyer feel really bad once it gets caught off guard with a radar, right? And Gdansk have a radar which is actually kind of balanced with only short action time of 10 seconds, but it again having some interesting gimmick that it gets a cooldown of 60 seconds and you have 5 consumables, right? So you're just going to be harassing destroyers from here, from there, maybe from the smoke, maybe you might be harassing that destroyer behind the island. So it's kind of having very strong and powerful utility that the Kleber will never going to have. I mean, Kleber has to force spot the destroyer, right? You have to push in, or you might have to get some sort of help from other teammates to be able to spot the destroyer and kill him with the guns, with the reload booster. Well, the Gdansk relies on the radar, and the radar is gonna give Gdansk so much value, because then you are gonna be more self-reliant taking on destroyers. Kleber is gonna be not a whole lot of self-reliant. You have to take some value from other teammates as well to maybe able to spot the destroyer. But the Gdansk can do that pretty nicely with the radar and smoke combo. You can simply smoke up, you just simply radar for 10 seconds. You can get it up to 12 seconds if you really want to, but you have to replace the engine boost mod 1. Now, that might not be the best idea, because you're still going to have pretty good speed, right? You already have a base speed of 43 knots, right? Which is better than Kleber. And then if you use the speed boost, it can get it up to like 47 or 48 knots. So the speed, just like Kleber, is very good. Slightly worse than Kleber, but the speed is very good. So that means that at long ranges, you can just easily able to farm the ships out there. And I mean, you just need to use the range upgrade on the captain skills, and you can get it up to like 14.4 kilometer, which is very comfortable. The shell arcs are so comfortable. The fire chance, just like Kleber, is extremely good. The alpha damage is pretty good. It's only the AP that it does not have. So you might not be able to chunk battleships or cruisers on broadsides. But again, I think HE is the gold ammo in the game. I feel that the HE is just so much powerful than AP in many situations. I mean, AP does have some very much specialities that just cannot be replaced by anything, but HE is like still sort of like a gold ammunition in the game. And even then, if you have HE on Gdansk, I feel that it's still gonna be strong. Your DPM is already pretty absurd for the 7 guns at what, 3.3 seconds. And with the Jersey Swirsky, another good advantage that you have. I mean, I might not even talked about the special captain for the Kleber, but that's going to be pretty good. Maybe you can use the Flip Abonio to get a Death Strike achievement, but that does not usually going to happen often unless you are using the torpedoes. But at least with the Jersey Swirsky, and hence the reason why I'm emphasizing on Jersey Swirsky, is that you have improved adrenaline rush. Now you also do have some sort of special captain for Kleber, which is Jack Jean's Honor, which also improves the adrenaline rush. So it's kind of having pretty much similar parameters for improved adrenaline rush. So I'm not going to be saying much about that in comparison. Let me show you the guy. Where's that destroyer? Okay, I just forget where the destroyer is in this area. Okay, so it's pretty much similar, right? And what Jersey Swirsky, well, if you get some torpedoes, because it does have access to torpedoes, 10 of them, but it's not going to be suited well to Gdansk with this torpedo armament expert, whatever you call it, this perk, because, well, you will have to get 8 torpedo hits to get the torpedo tube reload time. It's better on Holland, but again, for the improved adrenaline rush, I would still gonna be rate Gdansk pretty much here and there nicely. And also, if you're able to shoot down the aircraft fighters, okay? I'm talking about the aircraft fighters because it has pretty bad AA, right? It's basically having similar levels of like AA, just like you find on Kleber. Again, having very similar characteristics, except maybe one less gun, and torpedoes are way different. Torpedoes are actually like having a pan-European nation flavor, so there's something in that. Your maneuverability, just like I said, not better than Kleber, but it is very much good. That it gets very much similar to the Russian destroyers. The concealment, on the other hand, is not the best. It's actually worse. But I mean, I have spec the Kleber with the concealment, but the Gdansk without concealment build is still going to be 8.2, so better than Kleber. But since you do have a 9-kilometer radar, you really don't need to rely on concealment issues. Like, concealment is not big of a deal. You just simply smoke up and radar, and you just farm destroyer. You can always, if you want to, spec radar for extra 2 seconds, but I don't think so it's worth it. The speed is really important because it gets an action time of 90 seconds. So you improved it up to almost 2 minutes with the extra speed boost mod 1 thing that you can get. So that's the reason why the Gdansk feels really nice. Very powerful and kind of like an old school, extremely good gun-focused destroyer that I just love. And then you also have these long range, sort of long range. It's not that good range, to be honest, nowadays, 10 kilometer. But still, if you want to get floods, if there is a battleship pushing into your smoke, that's where these torpedoes are going to be handy. I mean, you never need to use the torpedoes in Gdansk unless any ship pushes you in smoke. And that's why these torpedoes are going to be very, very nice and kind to you. Okay? And maybe even the destroyers can take some torpedoes. And that's where these torpedoes are also pretty good because of the speed like Holland at 86 knots, the concealment like Holland at 1.6, and the reaction time is so good that these torpedoes feels really nice. And they're actually going to click on DDs, on the enemy DDs, because of their speed. So that's why Gdansk feels really nice. The overall package is different than Kleber, but I would say just because of the smoke that it gets and the radar, this is like a crazy powerful utility. It will help you win games. This is something that just makes it better than Kleber, although it's a very tough fight, but I still felt the Gdansk radar smoke combo can't be rivaled that easily. I mean, you only find it on maybe rare destroyers, for example, like the Smolensk, the Black. There are not a whole lot of destroyers other than that. Maybe the Ragnar, but it does not have access to smoke. Even the Smolensk does not have access to smoke, but the Gdansk does have that. So it's pretty powerful and very nasty. You can always, even if you want to increase the action time of the radar, you can just use the consumable enhancements. I mean, you can always make it to like 13 seconds of radar, which will actually going to be very powerful for Gdansk, considering you can just pump like 4 to 5 salvos on a destroyer. And with this shell velocity, you know that it's going to be very easy to land these guns on that poor destroyer. You might be able to kill him in 13 seconds if you fully build for radar, which I would not recommend. So I hope I just able to showcase some idea that why it's pretty good. Now, it does not have French saturation. Again, pan-European nation flavor. So does not have access to saturation. So it will take damage if you just not able to utilize the speed juking capabilities. Again, you have to speed juke and you have to farm at long ranges, and you can able to smoke up to fight against cruisers, the high HE DPM cruisers that you cannot take direct fight. Like they can just easily able to kill you because of your low HP, but then you have smoke, just like I said. So that's where Gdansk is powerful and sort of a alternate to Kleber, or I would say in competitive modes better than Kleber at number 2, without a shadow of doubt. Now you actually might be wondering, if I have talked extensively about the Kleber as well as for the Gdansk, who the hell is there's going to be a destroyer that can able to compete against those DDs that I have explained? Well, you can see here there is a Daring. I would say it's one of the best tier 10 destroyers in this game by a good margin. I believe that Daring, that's my personal opinion, and I think this destroyer fits so well in the hands of torpedo boat destroyers as well as gunboat destroyers, as well as in terms of the survivability, that it comes up with the smokes and the hydro, which I will be explaining. That Daring is just so amazing. It's such a perfect destroyer of today's meta, where there's so much spotting, where there's so much radars, and you can always almost sometimes get spotted by a destroyer or maybe a submarine. And unlike Kleber, it have access to short burst smoke generator. These smokes are the best smokes in this entire game. I have talked about the Yueyang smokes as the second best smokes in the game, but no one can compete against Daring or this UK DD Tech Tree line smokes. These smokes are so powerful because you can disengage in the smoke and you can just farm some damage. It's like a hit and run method that you can just do on maybe a destroyer that just gets spotted. I mean, if you shoot the guns, he shoot the guns. If he does not have the smoke, you will almost always going to have the smokes, because this dispersion time, it's sort of a con that it has bad dispersion time at 40 seconds. So it's very low, and that's the reason why it says short burst, because you just disperse for 40 seconds, but then you will have the cooldown time of almost 20 seconds or 21.5 seconds to be precise, which is insane. So if you just have the smoke run out, you have to wait for 21 seconds and you will have the smoke back up. So you have constant backup of smokes, and if you shoot the guns in, and if you somehow cannot manage to disengage, it is so powerful to just disengage again with another smoke. This itself is so powerful. Thus, the hydro that it gets, the hydro of a long action time of 3 minutes is so powerful that you will never going to eat torpedoes in gearing. Your maneuverability is so good. You are so agile. Your rudder shift is impressive. The turning circle is impressive. You are a nimble destroyer that unfortunately does not have access to speed boost, as you can see here. But then you have access to improved acceleration that you find on most British Tech 3 ships in the game. And well, you can actually able to speed you quite a lot or run very, very quickly and efficiently, even though it does not have access to speed boost, and it also does not have access to what I call it, I just don't remember that. It does not have access to radar. I was talking about the radar. The Yueyang does have the radar. The Gdansk might have the radar, at least in that list. But the Daring, well, it does, even though it does not have a radar, it does have access to heal, which is really nice. Like, you can able to heal, I would say, like 3k HP per heal. I mean, you can go and check that out. I mean, if I put the heal flag, you can able to almost heal 3000 HP per heal, and you have 3 heals on top of 24,000 HP that you already have, which means your HP theoretically it can get above the Elbing, which I have talked at number 5, and that is so powerful. Your defensive utilities are so strong in the Daring, with the Hydro, with the heal, with the smokes, that it just makes it so much comfortable to play. It's gonna be a lot much more less intense if you get spotted because of the smokes, right? And even if you shoot the guns, you can just disengage. If there is a carrier, for example, the carrier's entire defense, again, for a lot of destroyers, Tech 3 destroyers out there, that for some reason there are so anemic entire defense ratings for these DDs that it just feels so much. I feel so pity. I would say I feel so sad for them. They should have buffed some sort of A defense rating of all these DDs, but well, that's wargaming. But you might never know. They just come up with the solution like Daring with a Holland A. It can happen because that's the problem that we have on Daring. But at least you have smokes, right? You have smokes. If the carrier really wants to, spot you, then you have to wait for 50 seconds, which is actually a lot of time, right? So you can just disengage in the smoke where the carrier will just feel a bit troubled because he won't be able to spot you, and that's the problem. Spotting mechanic is so powerful that the carrier will actually going to get irritated that why I'm not spotting him in the first place because of the smoke that you are in. So the smokes are really nice. The torpedoes are really nice. The torpedoes TPM is still pretty relevant. You still have 10 torpedoes. There is not sort of I would say you are losing anything on torpedoes and anything on the gun power. Your utilities are insane. Your torpedoes are pretty good. Your concealment of the torpedoes are impressive. The reaction time is pretty decent and 7.8 seconds. As you can see, the damage alpha is decent. It's not decent like Shimakaze, but it's very much closer to the Yueyang torpedo wood, which I was talking about. The Gearing torpedo also is slightly higher than Daring, but it's very, very close, right? But the star of the show, with the smoke combo with the Hydro, it's going to be the guns. The guns with the range at 12.8 kilometer makes Daring so oppressive. If you smoke up in a defensive way, and if the destroyer or any destroyer spots you, if it does not have a radar, okay, obviously a Gdansk have a radar can be annoying, obviously for a Daring, but again, you have heals, just like I said. But the guns are very special. You have insane reload time for 6 of the guns. You have the DPM, which is better than most of the destroyers in the game, 261k HE DPM. That's better than what I would say Kleber without the reload boost. That's better than Elbing. That's better than Yueyang. That's better than what with the Gdansk. Every destroyer that I have talked about, the HE DPM of the Daring is actually better, 261k. Your AP DPM is also very important, and it's also at 350k. And you know what's the insane part about the Daring? Now it has access to short fuse sort of AP, and you have a 19mm armor penetration capacity on HE, which means that no need to fear about hitting on the superstructure. But again, I was talking about the AP before. You have the AP that will be able to pen the other destroyers even if they having 19mm side platings. A lot of the AP, if you shoot on broadside destroyer, they will just simply overpen. Why? Because they don't able to fuse into the ship itself, and if they won't be able to fuse into the ship, you will just not going to get penetration damage, you will instead going to get overpens. And the daring just fixes this problem by having not only the AP pen angles, improved ricochet angles, which means that, well, you will be having a lot much more penetration hits on angle targets. Also, it's going to be having a straight up AP pen on broadside destroyers. Almost all the destroyers at tier 10, almost all the destroyers, if I am not wrong, having 19mm plating, right? There is some exception like Gearing's 21mm plating, side plating, but again, you will just be easily able to load AP, and AP will just pen, resulting having absurd AP DPM on destroyers. So you can always switch to HE to AP, and you will just absolutely obliterate that target in smoke. So you can just trade off the destroyer so much effectively that you might not even lose HP if he's perma spotted, because you have smoke, he already utilized the smoke somewhere, and then you just get your smoke back, and in the second engagement the daring somehow managed to just take the other destroyer down with this insanely absurd AP and HE DPM that it gets. And then you have torpedoes, and then you have single launch torpedoes. Apart from the wide torpedo spread, you have a single launch torpedoes, right? So if you just throw the torpedoes one by one on a single bow-in cruiser or battleship, these are probably the most effective torpedoes in the entire game, at least on a bow-in target. Because if he's not able to disengage, if he does not have a hydro access, well, he's gonna get completely screwed with 7.8 seconds of reaction time. And that's why daring is so powerful. The gun power, the defensive capabilities, you have a hydro. There is no destroyer that I have explained in the four numbers, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, that have access to hydro, but the daring has it. You have also access to heal. What do you need more than that? Well, you need something more, and that's going to be Andrew Cunningham. That is the last thing that you need to buff the daring to the levels where it will become an absurd destroyer, even for that long time. It's an old destroyer in the game, and still one of the best destroyer. Really counters the meta, really counters the carriers, really able to counter the battleships if you're able to smoke up and disengage, and do also able to just farm the cruisers with ease on broadside with AP and HE. It's just I mean, I have no words to say. You have to play it to feel it. It's so amazing destroyer, man. You have a good concealment at 6 km considering it's a gunboat destroyer. It's not having a worse concealment like you find on the Elbing as a gunboat, you find on the Kleber at 7.8 km concealment, at 8.2 km concealment of Gdansk. This is a package that no one should miss, and a must Andrew Cunningham on daring. Now, I have put it on Eagle because carriers are overpowered. Unfortunately, it's the case. But if you are a destroyer lover, a daring without Andrew Cunningham is, I would say, what do I call it? It's a painful thing to see. It's a painful thing to. I'm sure you guys must be saying, but you haven't even having that Andrew Cunningham on daring. Yeah, that's a big mistake I'm doing. If you put the Andrew Cunningham on the daring, well, you get a couple of benefits. If you don't know, let me show you why. You are going to get extra heal, extra smoke, extra hydro, because if you kill 2 ships, you get the equipment spoils talent. And if you're able to get fires damage, if you're able to get the Wither achievement, which is 100% possible on daring, you just need to farm so much fire and flood damage. If I'm not wrong, it's a fire damage. At least if you farm 60,000 fire damage, well, you're going to get the main battery reload buff on already insane DPM gunboat like daring. And here's the funny part. Your speed is pretty bad, right? The daring speed is only 36.8 knots with the speed flag. Well, guess what? If you get 4 floods to the enemy ships, you are going to get the ship speed of 5%, which also going to mitigate some of the problem that it has with the speed, which it will eventually get it up to like 38 or 39 knots. So that's it. Andrew Cunningham is like the must on daring, and it makes it one of the best destroyers at number 1 for an absolute reason. Sure, you can get hydro, sure you might get radar, but you can just disengage with this improved acceleration. Just like I said, carriers hitting you, you just always smoke up. The guns, they just have so much punch. You will be able to have a really good lead at the start of the game just by killing a destroyer, because it is pretty much capable that you will have so much firepower in the late game by just keep smoking and farming and keep smoking and just single launching torpedoes on battleships. That that is just feels amazing at number one. I think I have explained everything that you need to know about the daring, the nimbleness that it has, the the utility that it gets. It gets everything, and it's a small ship as well. It's not like super big ship as well. It's really good ship. It's a really small ship. It's a fantastic gunboat as well as torpedo boat destroyer sort of, and a must ship to have in your port. If you don't have daring, you are missing out on one of the best destroyers in the game, one of the best tech tree destroyers that Wargaming has ever put in the game, and so it should be have in your port. Thank you guys for watching. I just hopefully able to make every single bit of details about every destroyer that I feel are very, very strong, and daring is also obviously tops the chart, and I feel that this ship is a must. And if you do have any comments, please let me know down below. I have extensively talked about the strengths and weaknesses of the ships, mostly strengths, because that's the reason why you should buy a particular destroyer, especially these tech tree destroyers. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you have any feedback or suggestions, please let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts about these destroyers. I'm sure there might be some really good destroyers out there. Maybe you might be thinking of the Shimakaze here. Maybe some players might be hating on the fact that I haven't even talked about the Shimakaze. I get it, the Shimakaze is an amazing ship, but again, according to the meta, it's gonna be a bit rough and tough for even newer players. Even for experienced players, if there's carriers presence, a whole lot of carrier presence, if there's a presence of a daring, Shimakaze is just never gonna be touching the daring. Oh my goodness, I just cannot go towards the daring because he will just gonna absolutely kill him. Your concealment might be good at 5.6 kilometers, sure. This can outsport all the other destroyers in the entire game, at least at tier 10 maybe. But again, if you did a bit of a mistake, if you were able to caught off guard by getting spotted by daring somehow, well, you are in a deep trouble, and your guns having still iname kg DPM, even though the alpha might be so good, that it's still, I would say, not that recommended. I mean, you can maybe replace it with Yueyang, because you have these torpedoes, these ridiculous high damaging torpedoes, but then we also have something like Cassard. But Cassard is a bit of a different beast, right? You have better DPM, but again, you do have pretty much insane torpedoes, but only they have a damage up to 7 kilometers, right? They will only retain damage of 24k that you are seeing right now on your screen, only up to 7 kilometers. After 7 kilometers, if they're just traveling further towards the battleship, well, they will just have reduced damage. I would just simply say it in a nutshell. So Cassard is a thing, Shimakaze is a thing, I can understand that, but still sort of the meta favors the daring more, the Gdansk or the Kleber more, the long range, or maybe the smoke, focused destroyers that have really good guns. Shimakaze does not fit into the place, and hence the reason why I'm not putting it. Otherwise, Shimakaze is one of the fastest destroyers as well in the game. Sure, I can understand the maneuverability, the nimbleness is still there, the concealment is still there, but it just cannot contest well against the gunboat destroyer. The gunboat will just simply chew you. The Kleber, the Gdansk, the daring, even the Elbing sometimes able to take down Shimakazes under some circumstances, and hence the reason why I just didn't put the Shimakaze here. But anyway, guys, I think the video got pretty long. Any feedback would be nice, and I will be catching you guys into the next one. Peace out.